Huge news in the film industry this past week. Netflix, after 15 years of a zero transparency model, has decided to release all of the viewership numbers and hours for all their original and licensed content on the entire platform from January to June of this past year. This could have humongous ramifications for the entire industry and for filmmakers, so stick around. We're going to dig into all of that on this video and tell you what it might mean. One of my favorite podcasts, The Town, had a really great interview with Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix. So if you want a detailed breakdown of his thoughts on why they have suddenly decided to be transparent after 15 years of being the opposite, that's a great place to start. I'll reference some of that interview in this video as well. First, some background. So before streaming, film and TV professionals had pretty clear indicators on whether their shows were successful or not. For movies, the weekend box office and then home video and DVD sales gave a pretty clear indicator on whether the film they made was a hit or a flop. For example, you can look at a film like Batman Begins and see pretty quick that it was a big hit. And the follow-up, The Dark Knight, was even bigger, really propelling Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale into even bigger stars than they already were, and affording the director some of the biggest budgets in Hollywood over and over again. Whereas a flop, like 2011's Green Lantern, set back the career of Ryan Reynolds nearly half a decade until he was able to revitalize it with Deadpool. And for Green Lantern's director Martin Campbell, his career has never fully recovered. Before Green Lantern, he directed huge films like Zorro and Casino Royale, still one of the best Bond movies of all time. And though he's still working on big films, he has never reached James Bond and Green Lantern budgets and prestige ever again. And then in television, the Nielsen ratings made it pretty clear whether enough people were watching your show for it to be renewed or not. Successes like Friends, The Office, and The Big Bang Theory went on for season after season, turning their lead actors into stars and making the creators lots and lots of money. Whereas a bomb of a show might really damage a creator or actor's career moving forward. So week after week and movie after movie, the continuous stress and anxiety over whether your show was going to be canceled or your movie was going to be a flop was a real concern for all creators working in the industry. But then along came streaming, run by tech companies, with Netflix being chief among them. And frankly, the only real player in town for nearly a decade. And Netflix, being a closed system, decided right from the get-go to not release any of their data or their watch times, so nobody knew if people were actually watching the shows they were creating or licensing to the platform. In the episode of The Town, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos said something really interesting.
And I'll be honest with you, at the beginning, it really did resonate with talent really positively that we weren't going to have the overnight ratings or the weekend box office. When things don't work on that opening weekend, it affects their next job too, and
that's true.
Their quote and everything. So there was a lot of positive around it.
While this was ostensibly seen as a positive, it also came with some drawbacks. Most obviously, creators couldn't see if their show was a hit or not. Yes, there were some indicators like social media discussions or water cooler chatter, but nothing concrete to hang your creative hat on. Also, with Netflix buying all rights worldwide in perpetuity of all their original content, there was no chance for filmmakers and industry professionals to earn any money from royalties on the back end. Quick aside, for those who don't know, royalties are payments you make after the show has been completed and aired. So every time you watch a rerun of Friends or The Office on television, those creators get paid a bit of whatever money the station earns on your viewership. For people involved in these types of shows, this is often their retirement savings, or at least a stopgap when work is slow. So why did creators give up all royalty checks? Well, Netflix paid a serious premium up front. While many movies and shows have decent budgets, a lot of creators pre-streaming content would have a lower base pay, but had more back-end possibilities. But Netflix came in and just gave you a big base pay right up front, while also promising you the freedom of not worrying about whether your show was a hit or a flop. Basically, Netflix paid everyone as if their show was a modest hit. Not Office or Yellowstone-sized hits, but still a very solid payday. And that didn't matter whether your show ended up having 100,000 watch hours or 100 million. You got paid the same. At first, everyone loved this model. Get paid as if you have a hit show and don't worry about whether it flops. You could argue that this freed up a lot of creators to take more risks and resulted in a truly golden age of television, both in quality, like House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, and Stranger Things, and just in sheer volume, with the amount of scripted shows nearly doubling over the course of the last decade. It seemed like everyone was happy with this model, of getting paid premiums and having millions of people see your content. Possibly. So what has changed now? And why has Netflix decided now to make the shift to not only greater transparency, but full and complete transparency? First and most obvious is the shift to advertising tiers for the different streamers. Almost every streamer now has a cheaper subscription tier that includes advertising. Hulu has been doing this forever and is one of the main reasons it's the only non-Netflix streamer to actually, make money. But if you know anything about advertisers, you know that when they pay you to advertise on your content, they actually want to know how many people are seeing their ads. So with their new advertising tier they launched earlier this year, Netflix had to loosen their grip on their numbers, even if it's just with advertisers. But still, it was a first step to being slightly more transparent. Second, filmmakers and creators start to get a bit fed up with the no transparency model. Though it may have been great at first to not have your pay tied to performance, many producers and creators of big hits on Netflix and other streamers started to feel like they were getting the short end of the stick and were not making the royalties and back-end pay that they thought they deserved. Again, this was a solid trade-off for a long time. Make more upfront as if your show was a modest hit, but get no back-end profits ever. Unless they made it up for seasons 2, 3, and 4 like the team of Stranger Things probably did. This dispute came to a head this year for a couple reasons. First, it was reported by Lucas Shaw of Bloomberg that Squid Game, a TV show that cost Netflix only $21 million to make, made the streaming giant $900 million. That's nearly $1 billion. I don't know how they calculated that exactly, but investment return of 42x sounds pretty darn good to me. And because of how Netflix works, the creators of the show weren't entitled to a single penny of the $880 million in profit. Then the long writer and actor strikes happened, with transparency and back-end pay being a big part of the dispute. The result was the studios agreeing they would pay streaming bonus to the highest performing films and TV shows. Basically, if 20% of subscribers watch your film or TV show in the first 2 months of release, you'll get a bonus. This, of course, also means greater transparency with viewership numbers, because creators of these hit shows need to have the numbers to see if they are entitled to a bonus. Again, a slight loosening of the grip. Also, by now becoming totally transparent, Netflix is seen as the good guys of the major streaming platforms, creating goodwill towards them from the creators of all this content, and painting the competition as the ones who are guarded and non-transparent, which is pretty funny because it was Netflix who created the zero transparency model in the first place. Nicely played. Finally, this new transparency model is most likely being used as another way to crush the competition, even if Netflix has pretty much all but resoundingly won the streaming wars at this point. It's kicking a dead horse. In the past half-decade or more, all the big film studios started their own streaming platforms, Disney+, Paramount, Peacock, as well as other tech companies like Apple and Amazon joining the streaming fray. And they too decided to take the zero transparency but pay a premium model. But then everyone, but Netflix, ran out of money. Without the astronomical head start that Netflix had and its huge subscriber base as a result, other streamers couldn't afford to pay the premiums that Netflix was. But they also couldn't offer any backend or royalties because they were also hoarding their viewership numbers. And now all of the other streamers are in dire straits and shifting their strategies to lean towards advertising or back to licensing their content to, you guessed it, Netflix. Increasing Netflix's already huge advantage. Only Apple and Amazon, whose content studios are a rounding error for their overall budget, are price insensitive. Disney Plus is struggling. Max, owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, has insane amounts of debt. Paramount is on the verge of being sold off for parts, and Peacock survives solely on The Office reruns. But Netflix also doesn't want to keep paying the premium prices they have been, so they have already said they are going to make a lot less shows and films in the coming years. But they already forced the other studios and streamers to spend so much money and do all they can to create a subscriber base to compete with Netflix that they now have no choice but to cut back and surrender to Netflix, and give Netflix more content so that Netflix doesn't have to make as much. It's a crazy circle. And now, on top of all that, Netflix has become fully transparent with their viewership numbers, which might be the last nail in the coffins of their competitors while simultaneously saving them lots and lots of money. Which brings me to the most important part of all this and why this is significant for creators and filmmakers. They can now see if their show is successful or not, which is a big bargaining chip when Netflix is bidding for shows and creators against other streamers. Sure, Apple or Amazon or even Disney or Max may be able to pay you more than we can, Netflix will say, but wouldn't you rather make 80% of what they'll pay you but have millions and millions more people watch your show? If you're already guaranteed decent pay or great pay, wouldn't you rather have millions of views and make a potential hit on Netflix and then get paid a bit more and have almost nobody watch your show on Peacock? Along the same veins, this is a huge flex by Netflix versus other streamers. Now that Netflix has gone fully transparent with all of their watch hours, they are basically daring all of the other studios and streamers to do the same. But my guess is they probably won't. Why? because in comparison, it'll probably be pretty embarrassing for any other platform outside of the premium HBO shows and some Disney Plus titles to compare any of their data to Netflix's. Also, because Netflix has some astronomical numbers in comparison, you will start to see those same studios license content to Netflix to make their shows hits before going on their own platforms. Max has already started to license HBO content back to Netflix, and Disney is now following suit. I mean, no offense, but the TV show Suits was DOA on Peacock, but somehow became a giant hit on Netflix. It's the only streaming platform that can do that. Netflix is also trying to build up their cheaper advertising tier. So for advertisers to see ostensibly middle-of-the-road movies like The Mother getting 250 million watch hours makes it pretty clear that Netflix has the eyeballs to make advertising on their platform worth it. All in all, this is a pretty huge move by Netflix, and will be interesting to see what the ramifications will be. As of now, the only data they have released is for the January to June time period of this year, 2023. So we'll see if they release any past year's data, but it's looking like this will be the norm for the future as well. So what do you think about the move by Netflix to be more transparent with all of their viewership hours? Do you think it'll be a positive for the streaming platform? Is this basically a victory lap for Netflix to officially close out a decade of the streaming wars? Let me know in the comments below. In my next video, I'm going to take a look at my 2 documentaries that I have sold to Netflix and see where they stack up in the grand scheme of Netflix content. So subscribe below and look out for that video very soon.